We are back. It is Colts Corner with Kevin Bowen and Eddie Garrison here, 10 days out from the 2025 NFL Draft. One of my favorite pods of the year. We'll get into the positional mock draft. I must say, I was pretty torn on ranking these positions within the Colts 7 draft picks, so can't wait for that. Eddie, we actually have some Colts-specific news to get to as well. I would say a little bit of the surprise meter on the release of Matt Gay. The Colts will have a new kicker here in 2025, and then they bring back their longest tenured skill player. He now is their longest tenured offensive player in Mo Alie-Cox, with Ryan Kelly departing to the Minnesota Vikings. So we'll hit on both of those news items. Before we get any further, we should mention we are recording this in the lovely Omni-Severin Hotel.
It's fantastic.
What, a Rory McIlroy drive maybe from Lucas Oil Stadium?
Yeah.
Is that fair to say? $24 million renovation here. Cannot encourage our audience anymore if you are coming to downtown Indianapolis for a variety of events. Whether it's a Colts game at Lucas Oil, we're, blocks from, probably just a block from Gainbridge Fieldhouse. I love, don't go there often, but I love little Harry and Izzy's action.
Oh, yeah.
Across the street. Georgia Street right here, Eddie, was so packed during the U.S. swim trials. They do a lot of fan activation events, which is where the Omni Hotel is. So beautiful lobby here. Again, extremely close to Victory Field, Gainbridge Fieldhouse, Convention Center, certainly all of our great restaurants and bars in downtown Indianapolis. Definitely check this out if you're coming in town for any event, but particularly a Colts game.
So this hotel, the Omni-Severin, was listed in the Green Book, which was published from 1936 to 1966. It's the only Indianapolis hotel that still remains. And we were talking with Ben on our way in, and he told us we're in the original building that was built in what did he say, the 1800s?
Yeah. So right now we're recording this in a boardroom. We have to be the worst dressed people ever to be in this boardroom here. So we appreciate them hosting us. But yeah, really nice lobby, nice bar.
Yeah.
I think anytime I'm in a hotel, I'm thinking, all right, if I want a late night cap coming back in, do you have a good environment in there? And that certainly looked like that. So thank you to the Omni-Severin Hotel for hosting us and what will be a busy podcast. Can we get a minute or two on the Masters?
Yes. What'd you think?
Well, I love sports, man. Well, I love sports. I mean,
Did Maddie get into it at all?
She was into it. I drug her in, but she definitely, I think, organically was captivated by it.
Now, what about Max Bowen and Rosie Bowen?
So Rosie wanted Justin Rose, on the leaderboard, the similarity in names. But she did like Rory. She said that a few times. She appreciated that, and similar letters as well. But, she was a little bit more Justin Rose-like. But I get it. I'm a sucker, and I try not to be a prisoner of the moment. But I think the most entertaining Sunday in my lifetime in Masters history. Eddie, obviously Tiger won in 97. Tiger won, he's won several Masters, but 2019, that scene with his son and his daughter walking off the green, certainly those moments were very special. Very special. But Tiger made those Sundays boring. In 97, he won by how many shots?
Yeah.
And then in 2019, Tiger bogeyed the last to win. He had a 2-shot lead coming to 18, and it was pretty much everybody wilting around him. And it was also a morning tee time for those that don't recall in 2019 with the rain delay. So those are obviously cool moments, but from the roller coaster entertainment, the fine line between choke artist and, to steal the Jim Nantz shot of a lifetime phrase, nothing like yesterday, man. Just the ebbs and the flows of it. Justin Rose, the putt on 18. Rory's resolve was just incredible. I mean, there are times you wanted to just absolutely be like, dude, what the bleep are you doing? And then in other moments, it's like, oh my gosh, you're the most talented player in the last, 15 years. Certainly, you got to go back to Tiger's prime. So it was epic. As a non-golf fan, did you appreciate it?
Oh, I did. So I had the Pacers game. Congrats to them on winning 50 games. First time in 11 years that they did that. Home court advantage start next Saturday, or this upcoming Saturday, I should say, against the Milwaukee Bucks, 1 o'clock, Gainbridge Fieldhouse. If you're in the 317 and 1 to attend, go buy your tickets at pacers.com/tickets. So I get home from that double
overtime.
At the
Omni-Severin Hotel.
That's right. Just 5 blocks away from Gainbridge Fieldhouse. So I get home from the game, and Olivia was watching this show. I forget what the name of it is, but it's based in a hospital, and they apparently got some training from like they went to an actual hospital and observed a day, and they talked with numerous doctors, surgeons, or whatever to make this show as close to real as it possibly can. And I must say, it's a really good show. Check it out. I can't tell you the name of it, but I think it was on Netflix. So after that was over, she finished watching the season. I'm like, hey, can we flip on the Masters? She goes, why? I don't really like watching. I was like, it's the Masters. I'm like, and I talked about it last week. I don't care for golf.
Right.
But I will only watch the Masters, and I'll watch it on Sunday. And I was like, well, Rory's leading, and he's typically a choke artist, so I want to see if he chokes again.
Oh.
And so then I'm watching, and then
you did send me a Reggie Miller Tiger or a Reggie Miller gift.
Yep. As soon as he missed that putt on 18, I was like, oh boy. I feel bad for Justin Rose because he had to sit around and go over to the practice facility, and I don't know if he was fully loose or ready, but Rory coming off the 18, he was still fresh, but it was cool. It was fun.
Yeah, and I just think the moments I love about sports, and I don't want to turn this into a golf podcast, so I'll try to keep it short, but like, obviously there's all this drama right now with Liv and how much money they're paying these guys to come play on their tour.
Yeah.
But Eddie, like, you watch Rory's emotion on 18 on a different stage and a different scale. You watch the 12 members of Team USA celebrate that gold medal, last Olympics. You watch from an Indianapolis 500 standpoint, Joseph Newgarden climbing that fence a couple years ago. That was a bit of a monkey on his back. That's the stuff that I love about sports.
Oh, yeah.
It's the raw emotion when you see, at times, some of these athletes, and I think Rory, honestly, is one of the more introspective golfers out there, but at times, some of these athletes can kind of be reserved and, like, explaining to you how big that piano feels on their back. But then you watch Rory's reaction when that putt goes in. That putter toss and the claps on the green, Eddie, to me, that was pure relief. It didn't hit joy until maybe he got to, I don't know, Tommy Fleetwood and Shane Lowry up on the hill, or he says to his boys eventually, he goes, I got to go get a green jacket. Maybe that's when the joy started to creep in, but just the relief and the burden of it all and to get it done, man, that was unlike anything I've seen in quite some time. So, epic day from Augusta National. We do have a busy pod. I'm trying to think chronological order. Should we start with the kicker?
I was about to say, just out of significance, let's start with the Colts cutting Matt Gay last week. I thought it was a bit odd on the timing. I know they saved, $2.75 million by cutting him, but they could have saved an additional $4 million, right? Have they waited until June 2nd to cut him? But your thoughts?
Yeah, I would agree there. I thought it was odd on the timing. It's funny. I went back and looked at my notes from the Chris Ballard season-ending press conference, and I like to rank my questions in green, yellow, red categories of like green, uber pertinent.
Kind of like your free agent, Colts free agent tiers.
So like these are the most pertinent to ask him. Then yellow, if we have time. Red, not really. I had in the yellow category. Do you feel that Matt Gay's lived up to his contract? And I didn't get the chance to ask him that, but if you would have said to me, Eddie, and I know this topic hadn't come up on a podcast this year, but if you would have said to me, hey, just thoughts on Matt Gay entering year 3, or like what the Colts should do with him, I probably would have said to you, I think they should restructure that deal. Like that to me would seem to be fair. Of like, you've paid Matt Gay to be an A- kicker or an A kicker, and Eddie, if we're going to play the grade game, he's been what, a D+ kicker? A C- kicker?
Well, he's been A+ inside of 50.
Well, yes, but from a pure percentage standpoint, he's been below average if you just rank the 30 kickers in the league. So I assumed when they did the Spencer Schrader bring back that we just would ride out this competition, and I say that in quotes, through the spring. You brought up you could have saved a little bit more after June 1st. I would have had no issue with that. So the timing of it is odd to me, and also it's one of these things where it's like, wait a minute, Spencer Schrader hasn't earned the right to be the outright kicker in 2025.
Nope.
I mean, he hasn't attempted a kick in the NFL longer than 45 yards. 45. So, and he's only nine total kicks if you add up extra points and field goals, or maybe it's a little bit more than that, but it's not many. And, I watched Spencer Schrader kick at Notre Dame. Length is not an issue for me. Like, he definitely can kick it long. Distance is not a problem. But, there was an erratic nature to him a little bit at Notre Dame. So, now my question becomes this. What do they do with kicker? Do you draft a kicker?
No.
Is that the most horrifying question you can ask?
It is. I do not draft a kicker.
So, Eddie, I found this stat interesting.
Roberto Aguayo. Need I say more?
Well, I will say more, but it further proves your point. Aguayo was what year? Now that you say that.
I'll find it.
Was
Hold
he
on.
before Matt Gay? So Matt Gay was a 5th-round pick in 2019 of the Bucs. If you go back to that draft, Eddie, there's been 12 kickers drafted in the NFL since 2019. So Matt Gay is one of 12.
Mm-hmm.
Of those 12 kickers, all drafted, so the thought with all these teams are we are going to cure our kicking position for the next decade plus.
He was the 2nd-round pick, Roberto Aguayo, in 2016.
Okay. So he's even before this. So I'll give you PTSD a little bit more recently. 12 kickers taken in the draft since 2019. Matt Gay has the 2nd best field goal percentage of any of those kickers.
Who was first?
So the first is Cam Little, rookie of the Jags this year.
Oh, really?
Kicked the game winner against Colts. So think about that, Eddie. The Colts just cut a kicker because he's not been very good, I think is probably how I would briefly summarize it.
Mm-hmm.
And he's been the 2nd best drafted kicker out of 12 since 2019. Drafting a kicker does not cure it all. And I think that's what makes it difficult. It's you find all these kickers in different ways, shapes, and forms. It's some of the stories in the background of these kickers. Think about Brandon Osbury with the Cowboys.
Aubrey.
Aubrey, sorry. He's a soccer player at Notre Dame.
Yeah.
And now has turned into one of the best kickers.
If not the best kicker.
Justin Tucker's history, Adam Vinatieri's history. I mean, all of it is very different. Think about Jake Bates with the Lions this year. So I don't think they should draft a kicker. But if I told you this, if I told you the 6th-round kicker will be your kicker at a 90% rate for the next 10 years, you'd be foolish not to draft that in the 6th round.
Right.
I think that's what makes it difficult. So as I sit here right now, Eddie, 10 days out, I would not draft one. But I think at the very least, don't you have to add another undrafted kicker? And maybe even if you don't do that, don't you have to add a Cairo Santos or who are these veteran kickers that do the little kicking tours every year on Tuesdays? You know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
All these guys that end up kicking for a game or two for these teams. You can't just give Spencer Schrader the job, is what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
And I know hindsight's 20/20, but looking back on it, you should have just kept Chase McLaughlin. And he's turned into be a nice kicker with the Bucs. So. Matt Gay's issues were beyond 50 yards. And like you said, Eddie, he didn't miss a single kick inside of 50 last year. And I said to you quite often when we brought up the Matt Gay thing and he was dealing with his injuries and, whatever, should Schrader be kicking for him last year, north of 50 has turned into a free throw. I don't think it's a layup, but it's turned into a free throw.
Mm-hmm.
And frankly, Matt Gay had become Shaq. He had become Tristan Thompson. He had become, that sort of foul shooter. And 50 is just one that you can't have that sort of inaccuracy from. And it's wild because think back to that Baltimore game.
Right.
He had a historic day in his 3rd game with the Colts here. So, again, the timing is odd. Did he not want to take a restructure? That would be a question that I would have. Certainly this is a different Chris Ballard, but I still think you need to have some sort of kicking competition. To me, you can't just give Spencer Schrader this job.
I don't think so either. I mean, he hasn't earned the right, kind of like how we've talked about with Anthony, of just being the outright week one starting kicker.
I don't know if it's apples to apples, but in Ryan Kelly's case, you have said he's too old and he's not living up to the contract. In a way, you're saying that about Matt Gay.
Right.
Not exactly, but that's what you're saying. But to me, Tanner Bortolini has a lot more evidence than Spencer Schrader. I mean, Bortolini, A, was a 4th-round draft pick, so you thought a little bit more highly of him. And then, B, he also started 5 games last year.
Mm-hmm.
Spencer Schrader just doesn't have that evidence in the NFL. So I will be interested, certainly, to see how it plays out, what they add to it, and how they go about things. But, yeah, just the timing of it. I don't 2 weeks before the draft is just a weird time to kind of do that, especially when you could have saved more money after June 1, I don't – that's a little puzzling. And I don't think it screams like we're now going to make another move. I mean, it's $2.75 million. It's not earth-shattering numbers here. So, you got anything else to add on Matt Gay, or should we move on?
I was going to just touch on some of the kickers that were drafted after Matt Gay. So you're talking about the 2020 draft class. to last year. Tyler Bass, Evan McPherson, Cade York, Anders Carlson, Jake Moody, Cam Little, Joshua Carty, Will Reichert. I did leave out a couple that because I don't know if they're still kicking in the NFL or not.
Yeah, again, it just hasn't been hey, if you do this, if you spend an investment, i.e. a day 3 draft pick, you'll get the reward. Well, that's not been true. So I think that's what makes this difficult.
All right, Kev, last week, I can't remember which day it was, Colts elected to bring back Mo Alie-Cox to that tight end room. Your thoughts?
So going back to our green, yellow, red exercise that we did in free agency, I had Mo Alie-Cox in the yellow of this category. Now, I think you need to have context around this, and I'll make sure to point this out. Eddie, I've obviously been very vocal on what I think about Chris Ballard. I didn't think Chris Ballard earned the right to have a 9th year. Made that very clear. But we also can sit here because, I tweeted out that I was fine with them bringing back Mo Alie-Cox under certain parameters, which I wanted to almost put that stuff in like all caps. Because I think you have a section of the audience that just says any Chris Ballard move is horrific. And I think that's just very immature, frankly, to just summarize all of it in that realm. Do I think Ballard deserved a 9th year? No. Do I think each move needs to be evaluated individually? Yes. And so as I evaluate the Mo Alie-Cox move, I say this. Is he brought back on a cheaper contract? Okay. Reports have it at $2.2 million. That's a lot cheaper than $6 million. All right? I'm good with that. Is he brought back as a blocker? I would ask that. Now, that will be a harder one to obviously know until we watch the 17 games play out. But like the pros about Mo Alie-Cox are he's durable, hasn't missed a game in the last 4 years. And think about tight end, Eddie. There's been a lot of injuries at that position group. He is a good blocker. I think that's important when you're talking about young tight ends. Sometimes blocking maybe isn't necessarily their forte. And then the caveat then you throw into, like, once you get through the pros of it, because he hasn't lived up to the $6 million contract that he just had, and he shouldn't be your number one tight end. The caveat has to be this does not undermine the need for a dynamic pass catcher in the draft. That is the utmost 1,000% must be part of this equation. You can bring him back. I'm fine with it. It's a 1-year deal for a 31-year-old tight end at $2.2 million. Whoop-de-doo. Doesn't hamstring you very much.
No.
But if you put TE1 next to him, that's a mistake. So we'll get that answer in 10 days or maybe 11 days when the draft rolls around, Eddie. But fine with it. It better come with the parameters, though, that he's not atop the depth chart.
Yeah, I would totally agree with you there. Plus, it would be good for just the room to have his presence. I feel like if you draft a young tight end and, Mo's been around for a while, you can explain to him just how things work around, just the organization, the offense and whatnot. The part to me that was a little bit interesting is I go back to the end of the season press conference. And I think it was James Boyd who put this video out and talked with Mo at his locker on locker cleanout day. And he asked Mo about returning, and he was like, yeah, I'm not sure yet. I want to kind of think things over, I just kind of want to weigh my options. And James was like, hey, what are you looking for? He goes, somewhere where I can win. And it just seemed like it was in this part of Mo's career now where he was trying to get somewhere where he had a chance to realistically win, because I think he sees that his time's running out in the NFL.
Yeah, again, 31 years old. Now, is that what the last 3 weeks was about? Is that what the start of free agency was about?
Yeah.
Seeing what was out there. He didn't like what was out there. So, boom, he's coming back. So you could probably look at Alie-Cox and Ogletree as like the blockers right now. We'll see about Will Mallory. Obviously, Jelani Woods, as I've said time and time again, you act like he's not on the roster, but you still keep him on the roster because it's 90 guys and you have room for that. But as you will hear in my positional mock draft, tight end is still a massive need. It just purely off of snaps, Eddie. Last thing on Mo Alie-Cox, you still lost, 400 snaps with Kylan Granson exiting?
Yeah.
So, tight end is still a need in that realm.
If you have nothing else, Kevin, let's sound off all the alarms, all the little sound effects that we can, because it's time for your positional mock draft. I'm going to clip that, and now it's going to be used anytime at the end. It was okay.
Was that the smoke alarm here at the beautiful Omni Severn Hotel going on?
I'm not sure, but I think it's just one of my favorite pieces that you do each and every year. I'm sure you have a lot of fun putting it together as well. But let's dive into it. Round 1, pick 14 for your positional mock draft, Kevin. you have them going tight end.
Yeah, I had a lot of debate after round one. I didn't have a lot of debate in round one.
Really?
I think it matches your roster makeup in terms of helping out whatever your quarterback situation looks like. You had arguably the worst tight end group in the entire league last season. I don't think that can be lost on you. I get it's not normal practice, and I get that it doesn't necessarily meet how you would rank positional value necessarily. But I think given your quarterback situation, in particular with Richardson, what does Richardson not do well? He doesn't find easy well. He doesn't find simple well. What do tight ends do? They provide simple. They provide easy. Nothing earth-shattering, but they help you keep things methodical, keep things boring. Do what Rory McIlroy didn't do on the back nine yesterday.
That's right.
Have more of a middle-of-the-green approach, two-putt, and let's move on. So for me, it does meet that. Again, positional value, other positions can rank higher. But I think if you're going to say what is the biggest need on your roster, I'd be hard-pressed to find anything else that outweighs tight end.
Yeah, I probably agree with you there. I don't know. The closer and closer we've gotten to the draft, I've kind of gone back and forth about the first round and what they'll target positionally. Like, we can sit here and say that the obvious need is tight end just because that is where the talent is, the most depleted, for lack of a better, phrasing there. But I go back to some of the bigger needs on this team. You need a right guard. You still need an edge rusher because we talked about it last week. There's nobody under contract after this season besides Leatu Latu at edge. So it's like, does Chris Ballard, once again, does he go back to that well? If there's a guy there that he likes at 14 or that, could be a little bit of a reach at edge, would he do it?
Yeah, and I guess kind of going off of that, Eddie, let's just get into the second round because I did go defensive line in round two, and this is where I could debate a couple of them. I wasn't as gung-ho about it, but I think how you just described and I say defensive line here.
I know.
I don't say just defensive end.
Yep.
So, you can talk me into a Dayo Adengbo type. You could talk me into even kind of a pure three technique. Now, I still think DeForest Buckner's got a couple more years.
Right.
But
and so does Grover, right?
Yes. And then certainly you could talk me into edge. Again, you've lost more
James?
than
Edger and James?
You've lost more than 1,000 snaps on your D-line from last season. Their two best defensive linemen are north of 30 years old, Buckner and Stewart. Like you said, they don't have an end under contract after next season besides Latu. So for all those reasons, and those are all future needs, Eddie, but still here in the present day, I'm like, man, I think you could use some juice even for this season on that defensive line. So I debated linebacker. I debated guard. Those are probably the two other positions that I debated, but I ended up going with defensive line here in round two.
And if you look at it, Buckner missed some time last year. Did Grover miss time last year as well?
Did he? I don't know. For some reason, I'm thinking back to the PEDs.
He played 17 last year, so no. But as you noted, they're starting to get up there in age. Do they start getting nicked up a little bit more as you start to get older?
Take more off their plate.
That too.
Both of them play a lot. So it's can you take 10 snaps a game off their plate?
Is that out of necessity or is that out of need?
Probably both.
I don't know if it's need more so want. There we go.
Well, probably both. Honestly, they're good players, but did you see the drop-off when they were off the field as well?
100%.
So can you lessen that drop-off?
So bring back Taven Bryan is what you're saying?
And I don't think Neville Gallimore necessarily, cures all of that.
Right.
That's been the one acquisition they've had of that D-line group. So, this is a little bit of positional value. D-line obviously matters a whole lot. And look, it wouldn't stun me if they went D-line at 14. It wouldn't stun me that at all. But for the here and now for this season, I'm going to go D-line here in round two.
Did you get your copy of The Beast from Dane Brugler?
I believe we're going to have Dane Brugler on later this week on our morning show, so I will make sure we toss that on to next week's podcast.
Okay, excellent. And round three, pick 80. Ooh, you go a little earlier in this regard. You have them going linebacker in the third.
If I rank the most indispensable Colts players on the football team right now, I don't think I could get more 3 or 4 names into it before naming Zaire Franklin.
Yeah, probably.
I mean, if you lost Zaire Franklin tomorrow, tears ACL tomorrow, your 3-man linebacker grouping would be Shagunalubi, Jalen Carlisle, and Cam McGrone.
Yeah.
Liam Anderson.
Yeah.
I don't even know who your third linebacker would. Like, it drops off in a hurry. So, I just think linebacker, based off purely the need, like, right? Okay, so I was debating linebacker or guard here, Eddie. At guard, okay, maybe Matt Gonzalez. At linebacker, you could say, okay, Jalen Carlisle. But, like, he's your 2. I mean, who's your third? And, again, it just puts all that pressure on Franklin to be healthy. So, you know, like I said to lead off this positional mock, rounds 2, 3, and 4 for me were really hard. Separating D-line, linebacker, and guard. I had trouble with those 3, kind of ranking them in the importance meter. I also think Anarumo will play a lot of nickel, so there was part of me that thought, should I wait a little bit on linebacker? But given and also, I mean, Franklin's not getting any younger too. I mean, how old is he?
That's a good point.
You know, so that I think factors in as well. So I went linebacker here in round 3.
Quinn Ewers didn't come across your mind at all when you were doing this?
Well, you know, part of it I think has to also match, like, you know, do the Colts need to upgrade at quarterback? Do they need to get better quarterback play? Certainly. But, like, you also, I think, have to be realistic about it, too, of, like, drafting a round 3 quarterback, I don't think is all of a sudden going to mean that guy is, A, getting reps in 2025 to help your football team.
No.
B, is necessarily going to be the franchise quarterback. So, you know, I don't know. Quarterback is just so weird, dude. It's just different. I understand what you're asking, but in terms of the most pressing immediate need while also matching realistic answer, I went linebacker.
So just to recap so far, round 1, tight end, round 2, defensive line, round 3, linebacker. Now we get to 4, and you have the Colts going guard here in the 4th round. And I know you were talking about it just from rounds 2, 3, and 4. I think it'll be even bigger of a debate for Chris Ballard when he's trying to make this pick, just because we know how much he covets the trenches.
Definitely. And I do think this kind of matches where the Colts are at. The Colts believe there's good offensive line draft depth in the middle. Well, I think this is it. You know, kind of like Bortolini last year in round 4. And unlike other spots, I think a day 1 4th round pick could be a starter. Not a guarantee. But again, like, if you got into a pinch on a Sunday, Matt Gonzalez, Dalton Tucker, Josh Sills, Danny Pinter, like, you still have some others you could turn to. I'm not saying that's what you want for 17 games, but you still have some others that you could turn to. So a lot of debate for me. D-line, linebacker, guard. How do you rank them round 2, 3, and 4? I could listen to people, certainly. That would change up those. But I felt pretty good about, like, these 4 positions. Throw in tight end round 1. I felt pretty good about these being the 4 biggest needs.
Now in the 5th round, you have them with a running back. Could you see this creeping up into the 4th round if there was a player like Travion Henderson, for example, if they fell in love with because of his ability to pass pro and how explosive of a back he is?
Yeah, I think it's a good point, Eddie. I am of the camp, I am of no running backs till day 3. So day 3 is round 4. That's the start of it. So I am a big believer in you don't take one until day 3. But I mean, man, you're one Taylor injury away from hello Khalil Herbert. And, I actually think Herbert is a nice signing, but you certainly need insurance here. If you're of the camp of Taylor's reaching that dangerous number where it falls off in terms of carries and his age, then certainly you could draft a running back a little bit earlier. But I liked it in round 5. If I'm not mistaken, I believe Evan Hull's the only running back they've taken in the last 4 drafts. I think it's since Taylor. And he's not even on the roster anymore. So it's time at running back. Pick whatever, 150-something, by all means.
Just a reminder, if you hear some construction in the background, that's because we're at the Omni Severin Hotel. Moving on to the 6th round, this is where you have the Colts going quarterback.
It's kind of wild, Eddie, since they drafted Andrew Luck and Chandler Harnish. Shout out to Chandler Harnish.
Wow, what a throwback.
You know what high school for Chandler Harnish?
No.
Bluffton. up kind of in our northeast section of the state of Indiana.
Oh, really?
Here. Shout out to him. Good dude. Northern Illinois product. Since that 2012 draft where they took Luck round 1, Harnish, I think it was Mr. Irrelevant. He was definitely round 7. They've taken 2 quarterbacks outside of the Anthony Richardson.
Jacob Eason and Sam Ehlinger?
Right. So they have not taken many day 3 quarterbacks at all.
Boy, I hope you got a bingo with Chandler Harnish, Jacob Eason, and Sam Ehlinger mentioned on this podcast.
I know. Certainly here. If you're drinking that on a Monday, by all means. So it's unusual for this franchise to take a day 3 quarterback, but I think it merits a need. I've said this now, for several weeks with Sam Ehlinger going to the Broncos, and now that Joe Flacco's officially going to the Browns. I mean, you have 2. I mean, think about it. Last year, for 4 games, you had Flacco starting, Ehlinger as the backup. You go back to the year before, you had Ehlinger as a backup for 12 of those games, 13 of those games. That's a lot of time where those dudes were either under center or 1 play away from going in.
Right.
Well, now both of them are gone. So, yes, Richardson, let's say he starts, Jones is the backup. That third quarterback, if it's not Jason Bean, still needs to be somebody. So, I've said this now for the last couple of years. The position means so much. I get drafting one on an annual basis. And round 6 seems fine to me. Maybe he's your third quarterback. Maybe he's your fourth. Maybe he's your next Sam Ehlinger for 3 or 4 years. Let Shane Steichen get his hands on another quarterback. I get there's probably no reps for the quarterback here necessarily this offseason. But sure, why not? Round 6, throw one at it.
So you're probably looking at Dylan Gabriel, Kyle McCord.
Would Curtis Rourke get to round 6?
I was about to say that. Curtis Rourke. Those are probably who you're looking at in there.
We had Damian Parson from Bleacher Report on our show today. He mentioned Kyle McCord as a guy that he
that
liked.
dude can spin it, man. He's a good passer.
Certainly been in, again, multiple offenses, been in some big environments in college football. So, 6th round, by all means.
Do you think this draft, to shift away from the Colts a little bit, do you think this draft can be one where we have this anticipation, kind of like the Kenny Pickett draft with Malik Willis, where everyone's expecting a quarterback to go early, but it kind of gets pushed back. So, like, for example, a lot of people think Quinn Ewers, for example, could go in the 3rd round. Is he going actually in the 5th round just because maybe we're overhyping it just a bit because it's the quarterback position?
I'd say these are some things I'm watching for a week from Thursday. First off, does Tyler Warren get to 14? I think that's pretty obvious. Another thing I'm watching early in round 1, where does Shedeur Sanders go?
Yeah.
With the Derek Carr Saints news, that's where Vegas has him pegged, over under of 9. Well, the 9th overall selection is the Saints. But as Sanders starts to fall, does that bring up a trade-up candidate? Or not? Or is he just going to fall, like Brady Quinn or Aaron Rodgers, and some of these other quarterbacks that just fell? Because I don't think, Eddie, there are a lot of trade. Last year the Colts are a team that tried to trade up. I don't think there's a lot of teams that are going to be trying to trade up this year. I don't think the top. I don't think like 10 to 18. Evolves. I mean, Brock Bowers went 13 or 14 last year.
Right.
Rome Odunze went there, and then the other thing I'm watching is like, do we get a 3rd QB in round 1? Is Jackson Dart into round 1? Is he not?
To Pittsburgh.
Yeah, Pittsburgh seems to be the most popular team that you see mentioned. Certainly Sanders as well. But, yeah, those are some of the things that I'll be watching for.
And to conclude your 7-round positional mock for the Indianapolis Colts, safety.
Yeah, I mean, round 7, Eddie, I could have gone a lot of ways. I do think, I made out a Colts depth chart that I'll probably post to the website here coming up in the next couple days just to give me an idea of, all right, let's look at an actual depth chart. Let's see where the lack of holes are. I mean, who's the 3rd safety right now?
Ooh, that's a good question. Is Ronnie Harrison still?
Like Rodney Thomas?
Yeah, I forgot he's still on the roster.
Or Daniel Scott coming off the ACL again. It's just like who, or maybe it's a torn Achilles. I'm trying to think what it was for Daniel Scott this second time around. So if you looked at purely at a depth chart, I think that lacks the most. Again, it's round 7. I could be talked into a million things at this point. Typically what we've seen from the Colts in round 7 is they just draft some freaky-ish athlete. Last year, the D tackle from Oklahoma. Go back to the big offensive lineman.
Jonah Lealu?
Yeah. What's his name? Jake.
Witt?
Yeah, Jake Witt. For some reason, I was going to say Jake Scott, and he was on the Super Bowl team. Yeah, Jake Witt from Northern Michigan. Those are the types of guys they typically draft in round 7. Freak athletes, small school guys that, whatever, they could blossom here. So I get that safety's probably not necessarily of need, and I get round 7, you're probably aren't drafting as of need. So
Titus Leo was a 6th round pick,
rounder, right, out of Wagner. But I think in general, what I'm saying is safety is a need. Just depth-wise. I mean, you're an injury from Bynum or Nick Cross away from really needing some other guys.
Kicker didn't come into mind here when you were doing this? Or did this come out before
I think
the
it was
news?
right before the Matt Gay.
If you could redo it, would you put kicker in the 7th round?
Again, Eddie, this is where I'm torn. It's like, if you tell me that is your kicker for the next 10 years, you'd be an idiot not to draft it.
Right.
And also, I would say this. If you're going to spend a 7th round draft pick just so you get, let's say you're weighing 3 kickers in the undrafted market, and if you spend a 7th round pick just to make sure that you get the right kicker out of those 3, isn't that worth it too?
Yeah.
I mean, so let me say this. I would not draft a kicker, but if 2 weeks from Monday when we do our draft recap pod, if I get mad at them for drafting a kicker, you tell me to shut the hell up. Okay?
I will.
All right?
Anytime I can, I will.
It hasn't stopped you before. So, yeah, that's how I view it. So, positional mock draft time. Next week, we'll get into the real mock. And we're 2 pods away from recapping it all.
I know that it will be all on 1075thefan.com. If you are curious about some of Kevin's work that may not be on the homepage, always go to that blogs tab up at the top if you are viewing on your laptop, and then it's the first one, Kevin's Colts Corner. You can see all the work that Kevin has done for us at 1075thefan.com. Very limited Twitter question section for today, Kev. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
Starting with Benji, he would like to know, could this year be a year where the Colts repeat what they did in the 2012 draft when they took 2 tight ends?
Boy, before the Alie-Cox Resigned, I probably would have said, hey, you could talk me into a tight end at round 7. But I don't know. I mean, let's play the numbers game. Let's say you draft Warren at 14. So you have Warren, Ogletree, Mallory, Alie-Cox, and Jelani Woods.
That's 5, right?
That's 5. And obviously you're not going to keep all 5.
No.
So, from a numbers game, you could.
Tyler Warren to the practice squad?
Now 2012 they went tight end in round 2 and 3. Fleener and Allen back to back. I obviously can't see that. I thought before the Alie-Cox thing, I was like, will they do a veteran at some point? Like, will they bring in a veteran? And I guess Mo kind of now becomes that. A lot of people brought up Michael Mayer. Now there's great depth at the position, so maybe you do it a little bit later. But I still think they like Mallory and Ogletree. So I would say no. But it's not the craziest thought.
Patrick's Twitter question is next. I know it's certainly not likely given the odds, but with how Chris Ballard has approached this season and the scorching hot seat that he resides on, how likely, knowing how closely Ballard holds his cards to his chest, might the Colts be considering taking a quarterback early in the draft? Do you go cards to his chest or close to the vest?
It's a Monday, man. Rory had my brain in a pretzel yesterday. The Pacers getting their 50th win to get my 50-win bet also had me in a pretzel. I'm not ready to answer those types of questions. Could you define early for me? What do you think Patrick means by early? Day 1 or day 2? Like first 3 rounds?
Yeah, that's where I was going to go here.
Boy, I don't think I can go there. That would be something, though, if they drafted. Part of me is like, well, I mean, Richardson contractually, I know is still under contract for past this season, but Daniel Jones is not. So,
yeah.
How do you kind of look at quarterback in that light? One thing I think it's worth pointing out about quarterback, too, in regards to the draft, and again, I would assume they will draft one. Go back to the season-ending press conference. The first time Chris Ballard brought up Anthony Richardson, what was the first thing he mentioned about him?
Was it his health?
His health.
Yeah.
Not his play. Not his inconsistency. His health. So if that's the first thing on Ballard's mind, that's got to be at play here in regards to another quarterback move, does it not? Unless you literally think, hey, if Richardson has a month-long injury, we'll ride with Daniel Jones and Jason Bean as our first quarterbacks. The weird thing, though, is like there should be no reps for Jason Bean this offseason.
0.
There should be no reps for another quarterback.
0.
Because Richardson and Jones need all of them.
100%.
So that's where I am torn on it. But having said all that, I think it would be wise to spend a day 3, pick at quarterback. But yeah, Ballard's answer again, availability, health. I mean, that was the first thing he said.
Consistency.
Yeah, I mean, he eventually got there, but consistently available, I think was also what he was meaning by that.
Chris is next. Question 3 of 4. If the Colts get off to a bad start, say 0-3, how short is Anthony Richardson's leash?
Boy, it's a good question.
It's always hard to gauge these questions now because A, we don't know the schedule.
Right.
B, we don't know how these games are going to go. Like, is it a game where
how the losses look? Yeah.
Right. Is it a blowout game? Did Richardson turn it over? Did he passed for 200 yards, rushed for 70, had 3 touchdowns, but the defense gave up 42 points and you lose?
Yeah, it's a good question. I guess generally, without knowing those specific answers, Eddie, I would say Richardson gets a month.
By the way, schedule release next month, right?
Yeah, typically it's like, I feel like it's right around now, like May 10th, May 14th.
Because they like to be relevant for something each month of the year, right?
Exactly. And our first look, by the way, at Richardson will be like May 28th or 29th.
Okay.
I forget when the first open OTA is, but they'll be back in the building on Monday, but we don't, and they don't practice 11 on 11 for a month. That's the ramp up period. Again, to answer Chris, just generally, I'd probably say a month, but boy, man, how hot is that seat? I mean, that's when you'll know.
Yeah.
Just the.
This is also assuming he wins the quarterback competition.
Correct. I would say if he is the week 1 starter, I would think generally he gets a month. But obviously, there's a lot of different specifics that kind of go into that.
Yeah. Final question is from Bryson. Are the Colts doing a with the next pick series this year?
They are, Bryson. No, I think it's been rebranded. I believe it's called Behind the Colts.
Yes.
They did the first one with free agency a couple weeks ago. Yeah, which I thought was a great look, especially at Cam Bynum. You can kind of see how great of a spirit he has with that. But yes, I believe they will do that. I think there might be 2 episodes. Don't quote me on that, but I believe there are 2 episodes on that. I enjoyed, I don't know, did you catch Jeffrey Gorman and Bruce Arians on the...
So I saw they did an interview, but I have not been able to listen to watch.
I forget how they've branded that, but they're going back and talking with some former coaches, former players. I know that the clip on Richardson went, I don't know, a tad viral, maybe viral in Colts world. Basically, to summarize what Arians said, we played on our morning show. He needed to stay in college for 2 more years, and he can't win games in 2-minute or third down. I believe it was and I'm paraphrasing a little bit there. Obviously, the college part, the inexperience, I would agree with. I would actually push back on the 2-minute. I mean, Eddie, to go back to last week's podcast, that's where he's been at his best. I mean, if you look at, and this is what is maddening about Richardson. If you look at his numbers, he has been a better quarterback on 3rd and 10 than he has been on 1st and 10.
Yeah.
I mean, think about that. 3rd and 10, you're supposed to be, Simba with the hyenas. It's supposed to be hell for you. 1st and 10, you're supposed to be on top of Pride Rock.
Why you gotta do that to Simba right now, man?
Dude, Lion King is such a great soundtrack.
It is.
I literally sing every song. We watched the real Animals Lion King. It's come out recently.
Yeah.
We watched that Saturday morning.
That one's is that Mufasa?
Well, the Mufasa one is the newest one.
Yeah.
But the Animals, I think, within the last 5 years, just so well done. What's his name is Mufasa, the Sandlot guy who just died. Who's got the dog and all that. I don't know why his name is
Robert Earl Jones
right now. Thank you.
Baseball.
That was very well done. But Richardson's at his best when he's trailing.
Yeah.
But not good enough when leading or tied. So I'll say it for a millionth time. You need to be better at boring.
Yeah.
So that's where Arians, I thought, again, 2-minute Jets game, Patriots game, Richardson actually has been pretty good there. I'm not saying it's perfect, but he's better on 3rd and 10 than he is on 1st and 10.
We already talked about you got the real mock coming out soon. What else? It's coming on
a
the
lot of
website.
draft coverage. I think at some point, maybe this week or next. Well, one, I'll take a look at off-season program. What will I be watching for with players getting back in the building on Monday? I'll probably post that later this week. I've done this for the last couple of years. I just throw kind of 10 draft names. Guys that I think could fit the Colts or should fit the Colts. And not just first-round guys.
Yeah.
But I kind of want to go with I try to do 2 guys at each position. Try to go with like the 4 or 5 positions that matter the most or where I think the most pressing need is. So I'll post that up on the website. Thank you again, the Omni Severin, for having us out here again. $24 million renovation. I think you'll really like the ambiance. I think it kind of fits a little bit of both. If you're coming here for a convention or wanting a place to stay for a wedding, it can check that box. But at the same time, I think it's got an inviting atmosphere for a sporting event and a stone's throw from Gainbridge Fieldhouse, Lucas Oil Stadium, and Convention Center. All of that, and very, very close.
A block from the Convention Center, like you said, 2 from Gainbridge.
Yeah.
It's 5 minutes from Lucas Oil. And, you're just a minute or 2 away from St. Elmo's.
I mean, I walked here from the Circle, and Eddie, it was
District
like a 5
Tap.
minute walk and that's where our building is on the Circle. So that is the beauty of downtown Indianapolis, and we got a lot of great hotels. But from a historical standpoint and the renovation here at the Omni, you will not be disappointed at all.
Maybe I bring Olivia here because it's, voted as one of the 12 of the best places proposed in Indianapolis, according to the Knot.
Boy, I wasn't going to say it, but do you think she'll make it to the end of this podcast and hear that?
You think she listens?
And they got like a cool little, I don't know if it's like, kind of like a little bakery vibe, a nice little like breakfast spot also in that lobby across from the bar. So always a good place to start your morning. He is Eddie Garrison. I'm Kevin Bowen. Thank you for listening to Colts Corner with Kevin Bowen. We'll be back next week previewing the NFL Draft.